Welcome. This is the first episode of Choice Words, a podcast powered by the Freedom Coalition for Charter Schools. I am your host, Jay Artis Wright, but I'm not only your host, I am a mom, I'm an advocate, and I'm someone who believes every child deserves an excellent education, no matter what their zip code is. And so this show is brought to you to bring some light to a conversation around school choice, but specifically for communities that you rarely get to see talk about choice. This is about bold parents and leaders who are leading a quiet revolution in education. School choice, innovation, refusing to be sidelined or accept status quo, these are the types of leaders and guests that we're going to have on this show. And when it comes to educating our children, we need to hear from those types of people who are showing us what is capable, what is possible when you take bold action to make sure your children have the right education. Um, we're going to spotlight real voices, real stories, and real solutions that you often don't get to hear about when we talk about education and specifically some of the disparities in education. So, the best thing you can get out of choice words is finding out what people are doing across this country that you may want to tap into, what's working, what's not working, how to connect to people, and ultimately how to revitalize and reimagine education. So let's jump right into it. I am so pleased to be joined by two amazing powerhouse women. First, Miss Jae Carter, JAE, not to be mistaken for JAY. JAE Carter is a national homeschool movement builder and the founder of Homeschool Yo Kids. And let's be clear, it is not your kids, it is YO, Yo Kids. So that should tell you from the jump where we're at with this conversation. Homeschool Your Kids is Homeschool Yo Kids is a platform that radically reshapes what support and visibility looks like for people of color in the homeschooling family environment. Her work connects, uplifts, and equips parents across the country with the tools to take charge of their child's education. Ms. J is a mother of two beautiful young girls, and I will give her some space in a moment to talk more about her challenges and her journeys and how she's been doing a phenomenal job raising her children and homeschooling your kids. Uh, Next up is Ms. Coy Morrison. Ms. Coy Morrison is an educator, a writer, and an innovator who founded the Lab School of Memphis, which is a micro school in Memphis, Tennessee, a learner driven by microschool grounded in Montessori and Acton models, but uniquely infused with Black history. This community and purpose, she's not just teaching kids, she's transforming what school looks like for them, which I love that. So, Coy, thank you so much for joining us as well. Um, and together, we're just going to unpack those aha moments that we saw for you that made you make the switch from traditional schooling or education, those aha moments that made you do a career transition. JAE, I know you were actually an attorney at one point by trade, and Ms. Coy, you were actually an educator for a really long time. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about that as well. And oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Oh, you were a teacher too. I'm sorry. Okay. Well, let's replay that. Jay, you were an educator, still are an educator, but in the classroom, traditional classroom for a very long time, and Corey, you as well. So I think that that's also a great perspective because, we look across this country, 80% of our teaching profession is dominated by white women. So to have two Black women educators on this podcast is amazing, and I'm super excited to hear more about y'all's journey. So if y'all are cool with that, welcome. Thank you for joining. And let's dive right in. Is that okay with y'all? All right. So let's see. So, Choice Words, like I said, this official podcast was launched by the Freedom Coalition for Charter Schools. Each episode, we want to elevate the voices of Black moms and also moms in general, because sometimes we'll have people on here that just add a different perspective. But the most important thing is we want to talk about homeschooling, microschooling, private schooling, charter schooling, cyber schooling, all the different options that are out there that actually encompass school choice. Too often, when we hear the word school choice, it's synonymous with vouchers and private schools. But in this capacity, we're talking about options outside of just school choice. So, one of the first questions I have for y'all is, was there a moment when you realized that what your children needed just didn't exist yet? And what did you do, or what did you have to do to build it for yourself?
I guess I can take that one first. I think that I very naively assumed that when my children came of school age, I would be able to find the right option for them as a veteran public school educator who worked in turnaround environments. I unfortunately was fairly certain that that was not going to be the route that we went with a traditional public, and again assume we'd find what we needed when the time came, and that was just not the case. That moment, when I understood that, was when I began a search after a reckoning, so to speak, with my preschoolers teacher, who during a parent conference was very focused on my child's inability to sit on the rug for 40 minutes during Mandarin class. And while she acknowledged that he was a child who learned while doing, and if she gave him a puzzle, he was listening and he could share all of the answers during the check for understanding, she just really needed him to sit on the rug. That was a scary moment for me because, again, as a veteran educator, I understood that at 3 years old, that's cute and we'll work with him, but fast forward, another 5 years at 8 years old, and by third grade, I could see my Black son becoming now a behavior issue, right? And now there's disciplinary action, and now there's labels being attached to him that he's carrying throughout his academic career. So I was able to see beyond just we need him to sit on the rug to what that could potentially turn into for my young son. And I knew that wasn't the right place for him and his twin brother. And so I started my search locally and came up empty. What I was finding is either environments that were more traditional than what I was looking for, and did not offer a progressive curriculum, or environments that were less traditional and took a more progressive approach, but no one in the building looked like our family. There were very few Black or Brown people, and that diversity was important to me. So I couldn't quite find the two together. I could not find this sort of innovative, forward thinking approach that served families that looked like mine and really centered Black and Brown children. And so I started to look outside of our city and contemplated moving, but ultimately it was just spirit that said, it was God that said that this was work that was intended. God bless you. This was work intended for me,
Mhm.
and that is what I did. And what
So
that took, I don't know. And like, I'll probably never really tell everything just because it's a hard story, right?
Mhm.
But
Well, I
I
mean,
wouldn't
but
want to
it's
discourage.
success, and anything worth having is worth fighting for. So, I mean, I
Yeah.
commend you on what you had to do,
Yeah.
and I just think that it's incredible, because you bring up a good point. So many families, when put in that same situation, don't have an out. You know what I mean? They just kind of have to deal with it and expect that it'll get better. So I appreciate you acknowledging that. And then also, let's keep it real. Like 3 years old teaching Mandarin. I mean, Come on now. Like, I mean, that's some high standards right there that I think that a lot of people don't even think about bringing to their children. So there's obviously a level of excellence that you have from the gate that, yeah, you needed to make it for yourself if you couldn't see it. Jay, I wanted to talk to you about this as well because uh, Coy took the route of creating her own school, a micro school, which we'll talk a little bit more about, the Lab School of Memphis. Jay, what was it for you in the sense that said, you know what? Again, you being an educator, what's your story? What was that experience like for you, the traditional schools with your daughters?
Well, okay, so only one of my children have been in traditional school. She made it to first grade. But before I had kids, I used to always tell people I was going to homeschool my kids. Like that was out the gate. Like I was 2021 talking about I'm gonna homeschool my kids because I was hubbing at that time. I was subbing. I subbed for 8 years, and during that time, I was like, "Oh yeah, no, they can't come here." And I used to always tell people, "I'm gonna homeschool my kids." I didn't think about alternative methods, like as far as micro
Okay.
schooling or charter school. I just knew that they couldn't come to public school. Like I knew that, but
And why is that though? But why?
because it
Hmm.
was just too much. Like none of the kids. Well, I won't. Okay, let me not generalize. Majority of the kids are not on level where they need to be as far as standard wise. After going through certain amount of grades, they're not where they should be with the time invested, in my opinion. um the standardized testing was a crazy thing for me. The seeing the moving of the kids, like passing regardless of what it is they knew or did or didn't do, long as they pass this test, like they can do nothing the whole school year, and they go past that
Hmm.
standardized test and it's like, okay, scoot them on, like they're good.
And you were seeing this as an
Oh,
educator,
yes,
like
yes,
you were
ma'am.
an educator.
And when I
Okay.
was subbing, the thing is, when I subbed everywhere. I was in the office, I was in ISS, I was everywhere around the building, even security at one point, cafeteria, like I did everything. So I really got
Mhm.
to see like really, really the interworkings of public school, and it was just like, oh yeah, no, this isn't right. Like this isn't like this isn't right. But I still went on to my own classroom where I taught 10th and 12th grade. I taught my first year teaching was 7th grade. English. I've taught English and creative writing. I had a 7th grader reading on kindergarten grade level, and they told me to give her pre-K work. And this is what really changed the game for me. And I had my first child at this time. I had my
Mhm.
Kenny, and she was only 2 years old. I stayed with her for 2 years, and I was like, all right, girl, we need money, so let me go and get a real job. And so that's how I got in the class. If it wasn't for her, I probably would have never even stepped into my own classroom. But security wise, it was like, okay, we need
Hmm. Hmm.
when I tell you I cried so much that year, like I was just like, oh my gosh, what are we doing to these kids? Like, what in the
Oh
world? I'm
wow.
supposed to pass her? Like, how did she get here? Like, it was just so much battling with
Yeah.
myself as far as like, why, what am I doing here? Like, and even though I declared from 5th grade on up, like, oh, I'm gonna be a teacher. I'm gonna be a teacher. I'm gonna be a teacher. Once I got there, it was just like, this isn't like, what am I doing? Like, really, what am I
Mhm.
doing? By my last year teaching, when I tell you I wore like 100, I weighed like 100 and probably like 30 pounds. I may be being
Mhm.
generous with that. I was sick mentally, physically, and spiritually. I was sick after my last year of teaching. And I was teaching 12th
Wow.
grade, and I taught 12th grade 2 years. And it was just to see what 13 years equated to. It was just like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, no, this is crazy. Like this is
Wow.
crazy. So when I left the
Mhm.
school system, it was not just for me, like saying, okay, now I'm about to invest in my children because I know for a fact this isn't healthy for them. This is not where they're going to be. This is not where they're going to thrive. But it was also like, okay, but how can I help everyone else? Because I can't just leave them.
Mhm.
Like, I can't
Mhm.
just leave them.
Yeah.
And so that's how,
Hmm.
the organization and everything else came about. But I just knew out the gate, like, no, my kids can't come here. And
Yeah.
I just ran with that, like, no.
Well, and let me ask a follow-up question to you as well, because I think it's interesting that you chose the homeschool route. There is a misconception that the majority of people who choose homeschool routes are, white rural women who are really very Christian based, who just don't want their children near anyone else that doesn't look like their child. And you're debunking that myth. And actually, not only you, there are 13% of Black moms across this country that are debunking that myth because that's how much the rate of Black moms homeschooling their kids has increased in the past 2 or 3 years. Um, how was that for you, though, to walk into that homeschooling space as a Black parent and just what was your experience like with that? If you could speak to that really
Yes,
briefly.
ma'am. Well, that was the whole thing. That was the representation. So when we moved to Arizona, when I first got there, it was like, okay, create a homeschool workbook. Like show families how they can homeschool. Like that was in my mind. Like, okay, like as I'm getting myself together, getting, replenishing myself, watering myself again, and getting my life back how I felt, good. I was like, okay, but like I said, I felt like I needed to go back and save people. So it was like, okay, well, make this workbook. And then I was like, okay, no, I got to get with the times. People ain't reading books. I need to create an app. So I created the Homeschool Your Kids app. And so after I did that, I went to my first conference, my first homeschool conference, and it
Mhm.
it was all white. It was all white. Like that's just simply to
Mhm.
put. Okay, so I walked out of there, and my friend who does not have kids went with me to that. And
Mhm.
we were the
Mhm.
only like probably two of four, I want to say, out of a room of probably over 100 people. We were
Mhm.
two or four in there. And I walked out and we didn't even make it to the car. And I was like, oh, I gotta do these. I said, I gotta do these. I gotta do
Mhm.
conferences. I gotta do expos. I said, but I don't want to
Mhm.
just do one. I need to
Mhm.
I gotta go all over. Like it all just flowed to me. And it was just like,
Mhm.
okay, we're gonna do this because nah, we need representation in this space. And like you said,
Mhm.
I know that we're here, but people don't know we're here. Like because it
Right,
is a
right.
white Christian thing and that's all the main homeschool organizations are white Christian organizations. All of the ones
Mhm.
doing the big conferences who have been around for 35, 45 years, they're white Christian organizations. There's nothing around it. They have a couple, black speakers here and there and all that good stuff, but they're white Christian organizations. So I was just like, oh yeah, no, we about to do this. And I put the emphasis on the yo because it's like the informality of it all. It's like, no, we don't have to be by the book like that. You don't have to do it that way. You don't have to think that you have to fall in that category. This is about creating what works for you and your kids. So let's
Yeah.
do this.
I love that. Yo
Your
kids. I
kids.
love that. I love that. So last year, the Freedom Coalition for Charter Schools actually did a polling, and we did it around the swing state voters because we wanted to bring attention to what we now see to be true about the need for education to be a national discussion. I really feel like we should have ran a campaign called "I Told You So," considering where we are now. But I'm not going to be petty. But the reality of it is that during that polling, 66% of parents that we polled in the swing states felt the same way that y'all two did. They were like, traditional public schools are just not doing it for our children. So what you're saying is not an anomaly. It is something that a lot of people are experiencing, and is literally why we're doing this show. Not only to give light to the fact that this is an issue that we all feel, but also to show that there are options and you can create them yourself. So I appreciate you giving us some insight to that. And I will give shout out to homeschool moms because in my experience, we did a rally together in January, Jay. And what I loved about a lot of those homeschool moms, yep, they prayed and they was into Christ, but they were willing to give you information. They were like, "Oh, you want to do it? Go here, do this." Like it was a wealth of knowledge that I hate to say it, but I think I generalized them as being like these crazy, like anti-vaxxers. And it wasn't. It was like really people like you who were just like, look, I want better options for my kids. And again, like this is why we have to have platforms like this to debunk those narratives, because if we just follow the national narrative, they will try to present, and marginalize us into being a certain type of way. And there is one of my favorite TED Talks by this woman. It's called "The Danger of the Single Story," and it's really about how we have to debunk stereotypes. Yes, we have to debunk stereotypes. So there's many layers to moms. There's many layers to education, and we are going to do our best to make sure people know those. So thank y'all again. So let's see. I want to move into, so knowing this, what advice would you give to other parents who are questioning whether traditional schools are truly serving their children? And before you answer, let me stop and say that my children, I have two school age girls. They are in traditional public schools right now. And not all traditional public schools are bad. The schools that they are in are actually some of the best schools in the area we moved to, hence why we moved here. So I want to also name that, this isn't a dog out of all traditional public schools. However, there is a strain that the only way you can get a quality traditional public school education is if you are in an affluent area. And not all of us are able to have that privilege, and that's unfortunate, and we need to change that. But back to that question, like, what could you say to parents that are basically struggling to find out, if the school is really truly serving their child well? And Coy, I'll come to you.
I think you bring up a great point, and I'm glad you said that about a being in a traditional public school, because for me, as I was watching my children, so I have twins, so I have had an opportunity to watch, you know, two, well, four, but at that time, two school age children who were born at the literally at the same time to the same parents under the same circumstances, fed and raised the same way, and
Mhm.
watch them grow and develop. And it was shocking for me to realize how much of who we are and how we learn and how we think is just in us. And even with this sort of norm baseline that they had, they were both so different. And more
Mhm.
than ever, I understood how unique and how different every child is. If there were any kids who should be similar or the same, you would think it would be them. And so, what that
Yeah.
did is it allowed me to explore, so, how does this child learn? How does this baby learn? What do they need? And so, my point in your bringing up the traditional piece is that I knew I didn't want a traditional environment. I often say that private schools are just fancy public schools with less Black people, because much of the approach is, you know, much of the approach it's the same, right? It's a very traditional approach. So I
Mhm.
think whether we're talking public, private, or even homeschool, because there are homeschool parents who are very much with the basal readers and so
Mhm.
traditional, there's a through line between every option. And I knew that I wanted a less traditional approach. I wanted a more inquiry based approach. And
Mhm.
I wanted an approach that gave them the opportunity to figure out what they're good at and to be empowered, and also recognize areas that may take more work, but embrace that. If I keep at this, I'll get this without the
Mhm.
shaming that comes from
Yeah.
letter grades and spelling quizzes and all of that. So, what I would say to parents is to really, instead of focusing on cost, which hopefully that becomes less and less of a barrier over time,
Mhm.
and public private, instead of focusing on that, like, what are you seeing and learning about your child? Like, what kind of feedback are you getting from your child about
Mhm.
what they need and how they learn? Because I don't think either of my older boys were a great fit for traditional school for very different reasons. One of
Mhm.
them is super type A perfectionist, and I think chasing those grades and wanting that gold star and the behavior color, like chasing
Mhm.
that would have driven him crazy. He would have been a model student, but so stressed and constantly looking to conform and comply because
And
he's just so type A perfectionist.
yeah, and I wanted to stop you for a minute there because I wanted to get a point of clarification because I know in our intro we'd mentioned that the Lab School of Memphis is under the Montessori Acton model. So could you? It sounds like you're describing Montessori and Acton in the way that they actually educate as different, whereas a traditional school we see it more as like a letter grade, that gold star. So can you explain what that difference is really quickly?
So we actually are not a part of the Acton network, and
Okay.
that it is generally not necessarily an approach, but more a model or structure. And so we're not a part of the Acton network, and we're not Montessori. There's a lot of Montessori inspiration in the way we
Hmm.
do school, but
But
we're
what is that? What is that
not
Montessori? Like, what
Montessori.
type of learning is that?
So with Montessori, with Reggio, with these project based, what
Waldorf.
we're
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
seeing, Waldorf,
Hmm.
what you're seeing there is agency and independence. And what you are seeing is a personalized experience where young people are really partnering in creating the learning experiences that they're having. And the learning experiences are really tailored toward not just what they need to learn, but also what they're interested in learning.
Hmm.
And then we also integrate the outdoor education, the nature base. So that is really what our approach is about. And I would say more learner centered than anything.
Mhm.
So,
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I really wanted to make sure that our viewers were able to know the difference, because a lot of time we sit in this space and we talk about education and we're like trying to compare apples to apples, and people are like, they just go to school for 8 hours or 6 hours and they're learning. Like, what are y'all talking about? But what we're divulging here is that there is a learning style that kids have differently. And I love the illustration you gave of like literally identical twins came out the same with the same parents and yet still learned differently, which I think is a brilliant way to just show that there is differences, and to be forced to be stuck in a one type of model is criminal. It's just really sad. And there's no other place where we only have that one option, except for when we look at traditional public schools, and they just want to keep that one option. So thank you for that clarification. um where should we go next? I think, this is we don't I wish I could talk to y'all all day, because there's just so many gems that I'm just uncovering. It's just like, oh, so I think we're gonna have to do a follow-up and just make sure people can get a list of all the different ways that they could find out how to get in contact with you, and also just find out, what is the learning style of their child. But one of the things that's coming to mind for me that I think is really important is how this all plays out. And what we're finding, especially in today's time, is that it's usually through policy and politics that are literally one and the same. I am curious to know, in y'all's work, if you've ever had to step in the place of policy, talking to your legislators, specifically advocating or lobbying at the state capitol for certain types of laws that can support the work that you guys are doing. And if yes, what is it that you said to policymakers that you think that you needed them to understand about why you were doing this and why this is important? And either one of you can go.
Well, I mean, Coy can go because I don't really do politics, y'all. Like, I get it, and I root for everyone who is in policy and does that type of work, and I commend them for it. Reverend Janelle recently asked me to speak on to the school board in regards to the
Mhm.
ESA, and I told her I got her. I signed up. Like, by all means, someone asked me.
So you do
I
politics then.
don't
See,
though. Like,
I ain't
cause
gonna let you off that
see, but I
easy. Well,
don't.
you did it. You
I
dabbled in it.
will.
You
I
dabbled in it.
will. Let's
Mhm.
say I will. Okay.
You
I
will. You
will.
will when called to. Okay, got you.
Yeah, by all
And
means, but I don't feel like that. I feel like we all have our walk in what we're supposed to be doing, and my passion isn't
mhm,
there.
mhm,
My passion is people's happiness, people's fulfillment, people's purpose. I like to see
mhm,
people happy. I love to see children feeling fulfilled, or just seeing them walking their light and their light actually still shining. So that is, that's my focus. But I commend, and I'm thankful for all the HSLDAs and all the who West Virginia, the Cardinal Institute, like the policy fighters, because I'm very aware of them, and I talk with them, but
mhm.
I try to stay in my lane.
Okay. So you try to stay in your
Yes,
lane, and I'm
ma'am.
gonna respect that. But I'm gonna push you a little bit out of your lane, because I do live in the world of
Yes,
policy and
ma'am.
advocacy all the time, and I try to push people like you into that space, because I think people get tired of seeing my face. To be honest with you, but you mentioned someone who I love and adore, and that is Reverend Janelle Wood. It's so funny, Janelle. It's just crazy. Um, But Janelle Wood leads up Black Mothers Forum, which is an organization in Arizona who I'm hoping to get her on the show as well. So Reverend Janelle Wood asked you to come and speak on behalf to a policymaker. What'd you say?
Of course, like I got her, because that's Reverend Janelle. Who gonna say?
But
Who's
what did you
saying no to her?
say?
I haven't had the meeting yet. They pushed it back.
Oh, you okay?
Yeah, they.
Okay, what you gonna say? What
What
you
am
gonna
I
say?
gonna?
What you
Oh
gonna
my
say?
gosh! Like, well, it's about
Okay,
choice.
come on, let's role
I
play
know.
right now,
Okay.
Jay. Let's role play. I am the governor of Arizona, and I need to know from Jay Carter what's the what with
It's
education. What you gonna
about
tell me?
choice. Like what you're talking on, what your podcast is focused on, choice. Like it's all about choice, and people should have the freedom of choice. I don't feel like anyone should be railroaded into anything that is not supportive of their success. Like it's not going to do them any good. We have options, and people need to become more and more aware of those options, because people are on a thing where they think traditional school is a mandatory thing. Like they don't think that they could send their children anywhere. I had someone in New York like 2 years ago tell me, "Oh, you homeschool? You could still do that?" I thought that was just during COVID, and I'm like, "No, honey, you could do this, like you know." And then I went on to explain and talk, and we pull up websites and everything else. So I'm gonna talk and I'm gonna have the conversation, but parents need to be more aware, and that's why I feel like a role to play is like, oh, just like no, hey guys, let me talk about it. But yeah, no, I'm just telling like people need to be free to choose what works for them. They need to be free to choose what works for them. That's the main thing. So
I get you. And like I said, I think that the brilliance about this is that it's also just showing the variety that, you don't have to be super affluent, you know, non-melanated to get a certain type of level of access and privilege. Like it definitely comes in different shapes and forms, and I appreciate that. So, Coy, I know you've actually met with the governor of Tennessee in the state that you're in. What would you say, or what have you said, and what is tip the scales, if anything?
When I speak to our legislators or the governor, I am primarily there representing the side of the ESA or those who benefit from choice and ESAs that we don't often see. I'm really there as a voice, both as a school founder and leader, but also as a parent, and sharing stories about the families who come to us and say, this is exactly what I've been looking for, and I didn't know it existed. Or someone who says, my child need something else. We are desperate. This is our last stop. If this doesn't work, I don't know what we're going to do. And the thing is, the access that things like ESAs provide make all the difference in the world. And not only for families to take advantage of it, but also for would be founders to be incentivized to build these spaces. Because very often there are people who would love to do this, but don't see a way to sustain it. There isn't they don't see the revenue potential. No one's trying to get rich or can here, but to even just operate, right? And so when I speak to legislators, it really is about putting a face and stories with the legislation so that they understand how impactful their votes are and who is benefiting outside of many of the assumptions of who might be benefiting.
I appreciate that. And again, I want to always provide clarity to our viewers. So if you do not know what an ESA is, although you should because they've been passing like crazy across this country, an ESA is an education savings account. And they are, I think I can't get the number. We'll have to get those statistics on the back end. But there are more than a dozen ESA legislative bills that have passed across this country. Education savings account, people call them the new school choice voucher. It's an opportunity for a certain portion of funds to go directly to parents in order for them to make choices about where they want to send their child to school. In a lot of the cases, I live in the state of Texas, for example. We just passed an ESA bill that is specifically for private schools, and that is a private school voucher. In Arizona, vouchers are actually illegal, so an ESA in Arizona would not be considered a voucher. But ultimately, it gives a percentage of funds to be spent in or for a private school institution, or to use that same percentage of funds, public funds, by the way, that can then be used to support any additional tutoring or educational services for your child. And this is an area where some of our viewers may be like, "Oh, nah, I'm see, this is where you guys lost me, right?" And on y'all shaking your head because y'all know. And I think this is so important to present this from a person of color perspective because look, the reality of it is if you're in a system where this is the school's not working for you, if you don't have many options, you are looking for any and every way to find a viable option for your child. And so, and Koi, I love what you mentioned, and how to create one. Because if none of that exists and you're in a position to actually now say, I want to build a micro school or I want to have a homeschool, can I get some subsidy, some type of support to start that? So it is a very controversial subject that we find. I have historically worked in the charter school space. Charter schools benefit from school choice, but they don't necessarily all the time support the ESA, and that's primarily because of this one point. We're taking public dollars and giving it to private school institutions. And at the end of the day, I think that we can all agree, and I think we did a polling that will agree with this as well. Black and brown parents don't care about that. All they care about is the quality of education that their children are receiving. Point blank, period. So, in the grand scheme of things, we have to continue to have this conversation around school choice and debunk this narrative around vouchers. There is a historical context around vouchers. White flight happened because Brown versus Board, and white folks decided to take school vouchers to educate their kids, and so that they didn't have to be next to kids that look like ours. We are not in that day and age right now. And here's the other side of that coin. Even if we are in that day and age, I am not lost on the fact that, our current administration is dismantling DEI and dismantling the Department of Education and doing all of these things because they do not want to have a robust, culturally affirming education available to everyone. But here is the catch. I don't care. If you don't want to have that, then you have the ability to take your ESA and your school choice and go however into your homogenized community that you want to and do that. And you know what? So do I. I can do the exact same thing.
I
So
love
to bring
that.
this all back, let's just bring
Yeah.
it all back in focus. Too often we get these words that thrown out there and we lose people. I don't want to lose anybody in this conversation about school choice. You need to understand that do not get lost in the politics. Do not get lost in the word shaming. School
Hmm.
choice is about options. School choice is about having the power to choose for yourself, for your families, and for your children and others around you. And if we don't have it, then you will be stuck in systems that do not work for you and you do not have power. So that's
That
my
is
high. Yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's so heavily connected to policy work too. Oftentimes,
Absolutely.
people will give me a hard time about that because they say, well, they only want this so that rich people can fill in the
Yep.
blank. They only
Mhm.
want this so that their kids don't have to fill in the blank. And the bottom line is someone else's motivation for voting a certain way or advocating for a certain thing is none of my business. Their
Mhm.
intent or their motivation for supporting it, it has nothing to do with me. I know what my motivation is, and I know the communities that I am looking to support. So if we are both supporting the same thing, but the motivation or what we plan to do with that is different. I mean, that's fine. That has always been the case. Like what you're saying, that has nothing to do with me. I think most of the pushback that we get, like you said, you mentioned charter schools, and I often, say that micro schools are treated the way charter schools were treated, 25 years ago. We're the new version of that. But a lot of that pushback on a larger level is just, white liberals and fear that maybe this means that they didn't effectively save the poor Black kids after all. And, that's just an ego thing that they're going to have to move past.
Well, you heard it here first.
Oh, so wait, was I?
No, no, you said the thing that needed to be said, and this is exactly why I have these types of guests on the show because we gonna say the thing. We gonna say it, and that is exactly what it is. And I will add to that that we don't need nobody to save us because we can save
Oh,
ourselves.
you
Period.
better say it.
So look, we're coming to the close. We've got about 5 minutes left. I would love to give you guys just a quick platform. What do you want our viewers to know? We've said a lot, we've shared a lot. We are definitely going to make sure Homeschool Yo Kids app, you about to get 70 more subscription followers or what have you. Lab Schools, I know probably already has a waiting list, but look, this has been amazing. This has been amazing, and we need to hear more stories like this. But in the last 5 minutes, what do you guys want our viewers to know?
That they free. Hey, in case you don't know.
In
No, I
case you didn't hear it.
yes, no, I'm
Mhm,
really big on
mhm.
freedom. And that's why I feel like this is all about like the freedom of choice. Like it's wild to hear people talk about America and talk about, oh, we free here, we free. And then you hear them so constricted or so like, so Stockholm syndrome ish and everything else like that goes on that does not allow people to really live in their freedom. And we're free, like, and you are free to choose what works for you and your family. I say your home your way. It should be your home your way. Cause like Coy said, with her identical twins, like I feel like that was the best example you could have gave, honey. Like you have two children that say they shared the womb, okay? They shared the
Yes,
womb, came out together looking the same.
yes, they're fraternal,
Oh, they're
but
fraternal. Oh, okay.
still,
But
they
either way,
share the
they was
womb.
in there. Yes. And they still are worlds apart. Like there's different. And she respects that difference. And that's what I feel everyone should respect everyone as the individual that we are. It's not a collective. Like we are all different. And we should be able to walk in our differences respectfully, of course, but like just allow people to be them. And from my 14 plus years in education, children are they're all different, and what works for one doesn't work for the other, and the generalization that traditional school provides does not work for everyone. It does not. It has proven, like, we have functioning illiterate adults walking around who have graduated from the public school system. I need people to really understand that's a national crisis. We have people graduating every year that cannot read or comprehend, who cannot write complete. I know they came through my classroom. Look, I was a part
Right.
of the problem. No, no, really though.
Mhm, mhm,
You have to choose what works for you. You have to choose what works for your kids. You have to choose what works for your family. Stand in your choice. Stand in your power. You have that power. Don't give it away. Like, do not give it away. I guess I'm a mute now.
Thank you so much. That was well said, and I believe you definitely inspired somebody. Somebody's on the other end like, "Yeah, that's right. I got you. Imma do it. I'm free. I'm free." I love it. All right, Miss Coy, what you got to say to our folks?
um in that same vein, just simply, you can do it, whatever that is, whether that is launching a micro school, whether that is pulling your children out and taking a homeschool approach, whether it is moving and exploring other public school opportunities, whatever the gentle nudge in your heart is that is right, whatever spirit is saying, you can do that. There are resources available, and you can absolutely do it. I am not special, and Jay is not special. I mean, we're all special, but you know what I mean. There's nothing that is different about us than any of you listening, outside of the fact that we just simply said yes.
Mhm. Yes, I love that. Well, again, I think it's unfortunate that our traditional public school system lost great minds, lost two great teachers who could have done a lot to help. But at the same time, I find it amazing that we didn't lose you completely in the education structure, that you are still here educating, improving the power of it. One of the things that I love that I've heard one time is that for Black and Brown communities, our inheritance is education. That is how we are able to get economic mobility and build. It comes from the core of us being able to have a fantastic education first, and you guys are proving that. I mean, your children are amazing. I could just speak about you guys for hours, and I just continue to say, don't stop doing the great work that you've been doing. Thank you so much for being a guest on our show. We'll make sure that the resources about the Memphis Lab Schools and about Homeschool Yo Kids are part of this programming so that you can also educate more of our followers to how they can step out, how they can be free, and how they can uniquely make the decision to change the quality of education for their children. So thank y'all so much. I appreciate you. God bless
Thank
and take
you.
care.
Thank you.